It was just another busy afternoon at the Westwood Mall. The air was filled with the sound of chatter, footsteps echoing through wide corridors, children laughing, and soft pop music floating from the food court. Shoppers moved from store to store with bags in hand. Families paused at the fountains for selfies, and everything seemed normal, until he barked. At first, it was just one sharp, commanding bark, then another, each one louder, more urgent than the last. Heads turned. A few people flinched. Then chaos exploded. A large German shepherd, tethered tightly to a man in plain clothes, lunged forward with alarming intensity, barking relentlessly at a baby stroller parked just outside a clothing store. The sharp, rhythmic barking echoed off the tiled floors and glass windows, startling passers-by. Some shoppers gasped and pulled their children close, others screamed and scattered away. Cell phones were whipped out, some to call security, others to record whatever this was, but the dog didn't stop. He barked like he was possessed, his entire body stiff, ears locked forward, eyes trained with terrifying precision on the stroller. He didn't care about the growing crowd or the confusion. He only cared about that stroller. The man holding the leash, tall, serious-faced, clearly someone who'd seen trouble before, tightened his grip yet made no move to restrain the dog fully. In fact, he wasn't yelling at the dog to stop at all. He was shouting something else, something no one could hear over the barking and the panic. The tension in the mall turned electric. Something was very, very wrong. Near the stroller stood a young woman, mid-20s, pale with fear, trembling, hands gripping the handle of the stroller that held her infant daughter. She looked stunned, her lips parted, eyes wide with confusion and rising terror. Why was this dog barking at her baby? What had she done? She glanced desperately at the man, holding the leash. "Call off your dog," she cried out, but her voice was drowned in the noise. The baby, startled by the noise and the swelling crowd, began to cry, first softly, then with the full-blown sobs only infants can unleash. The dog's barking didn't help. It pierced the baby's ears and heart alike. Security guards rushed into the scene, pushing their way through the crowd. Their radios crackled, hands hovered over tasers and batons as they demanded answers. "What's going on here?" one of them barked. Another shouted, "Sir, control your animal or we'll remove him." The man didn't flinch. He raised his hand and said firmly, "This is Rocco. He's not just a dog. He's a police K9, and he's trying to tell us something." The tension crackled like a live wire. People weren't sure what to believe. Was this a misunderstanding? Was the dog just confused? Or was something hidden in that stroller that no one, not even the terrified mother, knew about? The crowd was divided. Some demanded the dog be muzzled, others urged the handler to let him do what he needed to do. All eyes turned to the stroller again. A baby in distress, a dog in frenzy, and a moment that would soon leave the entire mall and, eventually, the entire world in tears. Before that unforgettable day in the mall, Rocco wasn't just another dog on a leash. He was a veteran, a hero with 4 paws and a heart that had faced darkness more times than most humans ever would. Rocco, a striking German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes and a coat like polished coal, had once served as a top-tier K9 officer in the city's police department. Hand-picked at just 8 months old for his sharp instincts and unmatched focus, he quickly rose through the ranks of the K9 unit, earning his first commendation before his 2nd birthday. His nose was his superpower, trained to detect explosives, narcotics, and hidden weapons. But beyond his physical training, Rocco had something more rare: judgment. He didn't just follow commands, he read rooms, sensed danger, and, according to his fellow officers, could feel guilt on a man's skin. He was credited with preventing 2 bomb threats at major city events and had once tracked a missing 4-year-old boy for miles through the woods, refusing to rest until the child was found, barely clinging to life. Rocco didn't rest until the boy was safe. Time and again, Rocco risked his own safety for others. During a warehouse raid, a suspect tossed a burning object at a group of officers. Rocco lunged forward, dragging the object away before it could ignite nearby chemicals. He was injured but survived, and awarded a silver badge for bravery. He had only recently retired, his official duty badge removed just 3 months prior. The department insisted he deserved rest, but Rocco never stopped watching, never stopped protecting. Even in civilian life, he stayed alert, because loyalty wasn't something you could turn off. It was in his blood. And on that day at the mall, Rocco's instincts, the ones honed by years of service, flared to life once again. Standing next to Rocco in that mall chaos was the man who knew him better than anyone else in the world, Officer Nathan Grant. Grant had served over 15 years in the K-9 unit, a career carved from discipline, heartbreak, and sacrifice. From the outside, he looked like the classic cop, stoic, unreadable, sharp. But behind that armor was a man who had seen things most people couldn't stomach. The things that changed a person. Grant had worked with many dogs during his career, but none like Rocco. When they were first paired 5 years earlier, he'd been skeptical. He had just lost his former partner in a line-of-duty ambush and wasn't ready to trust again. But Rocco broke through that wall. Slowly, methodically, with a kind of patient energy Grant hadn't seen in any other dog. There was something human in Rocco's gaze, something wise. They trained together daily, survived countless missions, and once even saved each other's lives in a shootout gone wrong. After that night, Grant stopped calling Rocco a unit partner and began calling him my brother in uniform. To Grant, Rocco wasn't a pet or a tool. He was family. He had learned to read the smallest flicker in Rocco's eyes, the stiffening of his spine, the tilt of his ears. He could tell when Rocco sensed a lie before words were even spoken. That's why in the mall, when Rocco began barking at that stroller, Grant didn't question it. He didn't panic. He didn't even try to stop him, because Rocco had never barked without reason. And if he was sounding the alarm now, something was wrong. Very wrong. And Grant would stake his life on it. It had started as a quiet day. Just a little outing to shake off the weight of memories. Officer Nathan Grant was technically off duty, though anyone who knew him would say he never truly took the badge off. He'd brought Rocco to the mall, hoping the busy environment and smells would keep his retired partner stimulated. Rocco trotted beside him, head high, tail neutral, alert, but calm. They passed by a few stores, Grant occasionally nodding at familiar faces, Rocco pausing every now and then to sniff at the scent of pretzels or popcorn. It was the kind of normalcy Grant hadn't experienced in years. He even allowed himself a rare smile when a young boy pointed at Rocco and shouted, "Look, Mom, a police dog." But then, as they rounded the corner near the central atrium, something changed. Rocco stopped. Mid-step, he froze, muscles stiff, ears raised, nose twitching with razor-sharp precision. His gaze locked forward, unblinking. Grant followed his line, of sight, and saw nothing at first. Just a woman, young, probably mid-20s, standing beside a sleek black stroller. She looked peaceful, unaware of the eyes fixated on her and her child. Then, without warning, Rocco growled low in his throat and barked. It was short, sharp, and chilling. "Rocco," Grant said quietly, instantly on alert. The barks came again, louder, faster. His whole frame tensed like a spring ready to snap. He pulled against the leash, lunging slightly toward the stroller. People nearby jumped. Rocco barked again, each one like a warning bell tearing through the crowd. Something wasn't right. Grant's instincts kicked in. He didn't pull Rocco back. Instead, he scanned the stroller, the woman, her bag. He knew his partner, and he knew this wasn't a random reaction. This wasn't behavior. This was a signal. It took less than a minute for the mood to shift from curiosity to chaos. Nearby shoppers paused first, then froze. Some turned away instinctively, clutching their children or backing against store windows. Others started whispering, then shouting, "Control your dog. Is he dangerous? What's wrong with him?" Within seconds, dozens of people had gathered in a semicircle, keeping a nervous distance from the barking dog. Cell phones went up. Cameras started recording. Someone was already live streaming. And in the center of the storm stood the young Mother Emily, She was visibly shaken, her posture tense, her voice barely audible. "What's happening? Why is he barking at me?" she asked, looking around for help that wasn't coming. Her hands tightened on the stroller's handlebar as the baby inside stirred, then began to wail. A sharp, high-pitched cry that pierced, the noise like glass. The child's tiny arms waved, legs kicked under a blanket. Emily's eyes darted from the dog to Grant. "Is this a joke? Get your dog away from my baby." But Rocco didn't move. He stayed rooted to the spot, barking louder, now alternating with deep, throaty growls. His body language was clear. Warning. Something's not right. Security guards broke through the crowd, shouting commands. "Back up. Give space." One guard pointed at Grant. "Sir, calm your dog down now." But Grant didn't move either. His jaw was clenched, eyes calculating. He didn't see a scared mother or a crying baby. He saw the subtle tremble in Rocco's legs. The silent code between man and dog, and he trusted it. Grant raised one hand calmly and said, "Everyone back up, now. He's trying to tell us something." But by then it was too late. The situation had already spiraled. No one knew yet just how serious it was. But Rocco did, and he was about to prove. The tension in the mall was electric, thick enough to cut with a knife. The crowd had ballooned into dozens. Some whispered, some shouted. Others just stood frozen, eyes darting between the frantic barking dog and the confused young mother. Then came the uniforms, mall security. Two guards pushed through the circle, radios crackling at their belts, hands outstretched in a mix of command and caution. One of them, a tall man with a buzz cut and a furrowed brow, pointed sharply at Rocco. "Get that dog under control. You're scaring people." Grant turned to face him, jaw clenched. "He's not attacking. He's signaling." The second guard pulled a radio from his belt. "I'm calling animal control. That dog's out of line." "No," Grant barked back, stepping between Rocco and the guards. "You don't understand. This dog's a decorated K9. He's saved lives. If he's barking like this, something is very wrong." The first guard didn't budge. "I don't care if he served in the Navy. This is a mall, not a war zone." The crowd buzzed with opinions, some shouting for Rocco to be removed, others defending him. Emily, the young mother, clutched the stroller like a shield, clearly terrified now, not just of the dog, but of what was happening around her. And still, Rocco barked, then whined, then let out a sound that stopped Grant cold, a low, mournful cry that he'd only heard once before. The night of the warehouse fire, the night Rocco knew something was going to explode. "Please," Grant said quietly now, his voice breaking through the chaos like a plea. "Don't ignore him, just look." The guards hesitated, still skeptical, and that's when Grant stepped forward, not aggressively, but urgently. There was no more time to argue. Something was about to break. With every second, the air around the stroller thickened with tension. Rocco was no longer just barking. He was shaking. His nails scraped against the polished floor as he pawed toward the stroller, whimpering now, nose twitching wildly. Grant turned to Emily. His voice dropped, almost trembling. "Ma'am, please, let me check the stroller." Emily recoiled slightly. "No, absolutely not. You're scaring my child." "I understand," Grant said gently, hands raised in surrender. "I'm not accusing you of anything. But my dog, he's trained to detect explosives, drugs, dangerous materials. He's never wrong." Emily blinked. She looked down at her baby, now wailing uncontrollably. Her lip trembled. "I don't have anything. It's just a stroller and my diaper bag," she said defensively. "Why would I be hiding anything?" "I don't think you are," Grant replied. "But something is there. Let me help." The guard stepped in again. "Ma'am, it might be best if you cooperate, just for peace of mind." Emily's hands trembled as she glanced around the crowd, cheeks burning with embarrassment. People were still filming. She was now the center of a growing storm she never asked for. Rocco gave another loud, desperate whine. His paw thudded against the stroller's front wheel. Then he sat, ears forward, whole body quivering like a live wire. Finally, with visible hesitation, Emily reached down, She pulled the blanket back, then gently lifted the baby up into her arms. The crowd leaned in, Grant stepped forward, and then it happened. Something fell from the folds of the stroller's base. A dull metallic thunk echoed on the tile. Everyone gasped. Emily looked down, and her face went pale, because lying there, half wrapped in an old burp cloth, was a small black object with a red blinking light. Grant's blood ran cold. It was a device, and it was active. The object clattered onto the tile floor, wrapped in a light blue cloth that looked like part of a baby's blanket. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Even the baby's cries seemed to quiet, like the air itself paused, sensing danger. Rocco froze. Then he sat back on his haunches. Grant's breath caught in his throat. That was the signal. That specific posture, rigid and alert, wasn't random. It was Rocco's trained cue, the unmistakable sign. Hazard detected. He stepped forward, slowly, eyes locked on the bundle. The crowd backed away instinctively, forming a wider ring. Security reached for their radios again. One of them muttered, "Get the bomb squad, now." Grant knelt down, hands steady, but his heart racing. He unwrapped the cloth carefully, layer by layer, until the item underneath came fully into view. A black pouch with exposed wiring at one end. No timer, no screen, just a simple, terrifying object. His eyes widened. "Dear God," he whispered. "It's a homemade detonator. Looks like part of an explosive setup." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several people stumbled backward. Rocco stayed planted, unwavering, as if daring anyone to dismiss the truth now. Emily's legs wobbled. She clutched her baby tighter, eyes wide and watery. What is that?" Grant looked up at her, his voice heavy with concern. "It's real. And dangerous, but you didn't know, did you?" She shook her head wildly, tears already falling. "No, I don't even know what that is. How did it get in there?" It didn't make sense, until she remembered. Emily's mind raced, trying to grasp the horror unfolding in front of her. A bomb component? Near her baby? Her voice cracked as she tried to piece it all together. I never... Wait, someone bumped into me in the parking lot." Grant stood up. "When was this?" "This morning," she said, her breathing ragged. "I was getting the stroller out. A man. He brushed past me really fast, like he was in a hurry. I didn't think anything of it." Security immediately took note. "We need to check the parking lot cameras, now." Emily turned to Grant, pleading. "I swear I don't know him. I've never seen that thing before. Why would anyone put that under my baby?" Grant placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "Because people like that, they don't care who gets hurt. You were just a convenient cover. They never intended for you to know." The weight of it all came crashing down. Emily sobbed into her baby's blanket, trembling with horror and guilt. All this time, she thought she was defending herself from an aggressive dog, when in reality that dog may have just saved both of their lives, and potentially dozens more. Security radios buzzed with urgency now. Backup was on its way. The area around the stroller was cordoned off. Shoppers were being evacuated calmly. The threat was contained, but the emotional aftershock was only beginning. People stared at Rocco with new eyes. What they had once seen as a threat was now a hero. One woman near the crowd whispered, "He saved that baby." Another added, "He saved all of us." And Grant just stood beside his loyal partner, heart full, eyes glassy. Rocco looked up at him, tail still now, ears forward. Mission complete. A silent salute between man and dog. For a long moment, no one said a word. The mall, once filled with laughter and chatter, had fallen into a stunned silence. Then a ripple, a single clap from somewhere in the crowd. Another followed, and then, as if a dam had broken, applause burst forth. It was hesitant at first, shaky hands clapping in disbelief. But it quickly grew, swelling into thunderous recognition of what had just happened. People clapped not just for Grant, but for the silent, steady German shepherd sitting calmly next to the stroller, eyes still fixed on his handler like a soldier, awaiting orders. The transformation in the crowd was instant. Where they had once shouted at Grant to control his dog, now they reached out to thank him. A few even bent down to pat Rocco, tears in their eyes. Emily clutched her baby tightly, her legs still shaking. She looked at the pouch that could have ended her child's life, then at Rocco. Sobbing, she dropped to her knees beside the dog. "You saved us," she whispered, wrapping one arm around her baby, the other around Rocco's thick neck. "You saved my baby." Rocco leaned in slightly, licking her trembling hand. Meanwhile, someone in the crowd had already uploaded the video, starting with the chaos, then Grant's desperate plea, and ending with the explosive being found. It was raw, real, and deeply emotional. Within minutes, it began gaining traction online. Social media buzzed with hashtags like "Your Hero Dog," "Rocco the Rescuer," and "Mall Miracle." People who had once feared the barking dog now championed his instinct. He wasn't just a retired K9 anymore. He was a hero in the eyes of the world. By the time the police arrived, the mall had returned to order, but the emotional tremors still lingered in the air. Officers swarmed the area, carefully examining the device and taking witness statements. Emily was escorted to safety, her baby checked and confirmed unharmed, but before leaving, she turned to Grant and Rocco once more. "Please, let me know how I can ever thank you." "You just did," Grant replied with a gentle smile, glancing down at Rocco, whose ears twitched slightly, sensing the shift in mood. The following day, the mall issued an official statement, calling Rocco's actions heroic and life-saving. They released footage from their security cameras which confirmed Emily's account. A man had brushed past her in the parking lot, suspiciously fast, right before the device was likely planted. Local news stations picked up the story almost immediately. Grant and Rocco were invited onto morning shows where anchors held back tears as they replayed the viral video and recounted the miracle. Photos of Rocco sitting proud in front of his old K9 badge filled television screens and news feeds. But it was a visit a few days later that moved Grant most. Emily arrived at the police department holding her baby, now smiling and playful, unaware of how close they had come to tragedy. She had baked dog-friendly treats for Rocco and brought a hand-drawn card from her niece that read, "Thank you for barking." Her eyes welled up as she knelt again beside Rocco. "I don't think I'll ever feel safe again unless I know you're nearby." Rocco licked her cheek gently, his body calm, as if reminding her that everything was okay now. In that moment, no words were needed, just gratitude. Silent, powerful, and everlasting. Long after the mall had returned to normal, the echoes of Rocco's bark still lived on, not in fear but in reverence. He never spoke a word, never gave a speech, never demanded praise. Yet he had screamed louder than anyone could have, through pure instinct, loyalty, and the urgency in his bark. In interviews that followed, Grant was asked again and again, "What made you trust him even when everyone was panicking?" His answer never changed. "I never doubted him, not for a second. Rocco's saved lives before. You don't question a soul like his, you listen." Rocco became more than just a police dog that day. He became a symbol. Schools invited Grant to speak about him. Children painted pictures of the brave German shepherd who had stopped a tragedy. Local police departments used his story in training, reminding new recruits to trust their canine partners. Then came the ceremony. Held on the steps of City Hall, with press, officials, and community members present, Rocco was officially honored. He wore his old K9 harness for the last time as the mayor bent down and attached a medal to it, engraved with the words, "For bravery beyond bark." The crowd stood and clapped. Some cried. And Rocco? He just stood tall beside Grant, ever calm, ever watchful. A gentle hero in fur. His story inspired more than admiration. It reignited respect for the silent guardians that work beside officers every day. Rocco's legacy wasn't just the life he saved, but the hearts he awakened to the quiet power of animal intuition. And in homes, classrooms, and police units across the country, People looked at their dogs a little differently. More patiently, more gratefully, because sometimes heroes don't speak, they bark. As the sun set on the final chapter of this story, one truth rang louder than anything else that day in the mall. Sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones we so often overlook. Rocco didn't know how to talk. He couldn't explain, reason, or plead, but he knew, and he acted. And because one man trusted his dog over the noise of panic, a child's life was spared. It's easy to dismiss an animal's instincts in our world of logic and reason. But what if, just once, we stopped and listened? What if we looked a little deeper into their eyes, understood their barks not as noise but as messages, and believed that behind those silent gazes is wisdom older than words? Grant once said, "Rocco taught me more than most people ever could, about loyalty, about presence, and about how you don't need to speak to save a life." In the days that followed, the world didn't just celebrate a heroic dog. It remembered what trust means, what loyalty looks like, and what it truly means to be a protector. We live in a time where many cry for help, but go unheard. Rocco reminded us that help can come from the most unexpected places, that sometimes the loudest cries for help come from those who can't speak at all. And maybe, just maybe, the world would be a better place if we all tried to listen a little more. If you believe in the power of animal intuition, if this story touched your heart, like this video, share Rocco's story, and drop a comment below. Have you ever had a moment where an animal sensed something before you did? Because today, one bark saved a life, and tomorrow, it could save another.